I'm a man, not a freak like my brother. Get out! Miller!
He could have saved himself, but he didn't. He saved me. And died. So he's gone. And I'm here alive. Why? It's all so meaningless. You can't help but ask yourself what life is all about.
Everything's fine. A married man, air conditioning, champagne and potato chips. It's just a wonderful party.
You're tearing me apart!
What?
You say one thing, he says another, and everybody changes back again!
In the 1940s, there were two Russian-born men whose quest for awakening genius in performing artists proved to be the unseen force behind many Hollywood legends. Michael Chéjov, who died in 1955, and his good friend George Stanoff. The tumultuous lives of these two men is not only their story, but the story of the 20th century. Why did Michael Chéjov and George Stanoff dedicate their lives to mastering the essence of artistic genius? From what inner source did the passion to pass on these secrets come? And why is the work of these two men virtually unheard of in comparison to Stanislavski, Stella Adler, Sanford Meisner, and Lee Strasberg?
Why do we study? Why can't we get up and act like children do? The naivete of the child, the belief in everything around us, we lose when we grow up. Our profession is based on imagination, concentration, and radiation. We may read in the newspapers that 150 people died in an aeroplane accident. We read it, we sip some coffee, we turn the page, and we go on. As artists, you have to visualize and experience everything that you see in your imagination. Fortunately, we can develop imagination through exercise. We can stretch it. We can make it more interesting. We can make it unique. Imagination is a whole world in which you as artists live.
These master teachers, Chéjov, Stanoff, and Stanoff's talented wife Elsa Schreiber, have inspired dozens of actors and directors in over 100 Academy Award-winning or nominated films that encompass every style and genre of American cinema in the last half-century.
I hope they didn't make a mistake in giving this to me, because I'm not going to give it back for anything in the world.
Yul Brynner, Ingrid Bergman, Leslie Caron, Gary Cooper, James Dean, Rex Harrison, Sterling Hayden, Jennifer Jones, Gene Kelly, Marilyn Monroe, Patricia Neal, Paul Newman, Jack Palance, Mala Powers, Tyrone Power, Anthony Quinn, Robert Stack, Beatrice Straight, Robert Taylor, and yours truly, Gregory Peck, are only a few of the artists to be guided by these extraordinary teachers.
Well, face me now, Miss Wales. Come on, look at me. Same face, same eyes, same nose, same suit, same everything. Here, take my hand. Feel it. Same flesh as yours, isn't it? No different today than it was yesterday, Miss Wales.
You say he is in the Guards. His name?
Baron Christian de Neuvillette.
In many cases, the public wants to think that the actor has done everything all on their own. In other words, that they come up with all of this and they have a director who basically moves them from place to place, which of course is, is not usually true or is not really supposed to be true. So actors, for the most part, don't talk about who coached them on a particular role.
Well, I'm a little shy of words like devotion. Yeah, so anyway, I liked them both. They were both a hell of two wonderful guys. That's all. Loved it. And they knew a lot about acting. So, and very often, if I was going to do a film, I would consult with either one or the other.
heard about you.
What have you heard, Shane?
I've heard that you're a low-down Yankee liar.
Well, George is a part of my life, a very important one. He caught me at a time when I was most insecure and tried to make me into a good enough actor to get the Academy nomination.
My lifelong pal. What a laugh.
I think at that time what was most important for me was the respect for something that was a profession. Not just the art of being pretty and knowing how to smile and being seductive and taking your clothes off and that sort of thing.
I had the pleasure of knowing this fabulous man, Michael Chéjov. He was just brilliant. Besides the great talent that he had great love in his heart, and you were never alone when you were acting. He was with you all the time, and it was just a delightful experience.
I don't like sudden passes.
Really ease into it, then. There's another one coming up on your right.
Don't you ever ask?
Well, the only question I'll ask any woman is what time is your husband coming home? What's keeping you? You're over the age of consent, ain't you?
Way over.
If you get our shoelaces untied, what do you say?
I'd say I've been asked with a little more finesse in my time.
I'll bring you a 2-pound box of candy, maybe a bottle of perfume from the drugstore.
No, thanks. I've done my time with one cold-blooded bastard. I'm not looking for another.
Hard. It was a small part, you know, and I didn't think I would win, but I was called in the middle of the night and told I'd won because I was a little pregnant at the time, and it was impossible for me to go. I think I had a baby a week later.
I carried 23 great wounds, all got in battle. 75 men have I killed with my own hands in battle. I scatter, I burn my enemies' tents. I take away their flocks and herds. The Turks pay me a golden treasure, yet I am poor, because I am a river to my people.
He said a great actor is coming to the house, and we're going to have a party for him, and all the Russians, Shalyapin and Rachmaninoff, and everybody's going to be here because he's really the Russians' hero. And Mr. Chéjov is going to be here. So I was invited. I was just a kid, and I was invited to be there. And I must say, I expected a 6'7" man to walk in, very imposing and with his great Russian voice. Instead, Mr. Chéjov was a little tiny man, very frail, and he talked like that. He said, yes, go, hello, how are you? Yes, I know you, I've seen you on the beaches.
To understand, one must begin by examining the environment into which Chéjov and Shtanov were born. Tsarist Russia at the turn of the 20th century. It was a glittering world of opulent palaces and costume balls. It was also a time of tremendous creativity in the arts, dance, music, and theater. It was here, too, that the explosion of genius in literature, with Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, Anton Chekhov, and many others, made an indelible mark on the soul and history of this enigmatic country.
In the turbulent environment of Tsarist Russia, Michael Chéjov was born in St. Petersburg in 1891. Misha, as he was called by his friends, was the son of Alexander Chéjov, the talented older brother of the famous playwright Anton Chéjov. After several years of intensive theatrical training, Chéjov was introduced to Stanislavski, the preeminent actor and teacher of his time in Russia, and the co-founder of the renowned Moscow Art Theater. He invited Chéjov to audition. Stanislavski wrote simply of Chéjov, He is a genius. From 1912 to 1917, Michael Chéjov rose to prominence, first in small roles at the Moscow Art Theater, and then in leading roles. Audiences fell under the spell of Chekhov's imaginative performances. Chekhov's innovative approach to acting concentrated on the ego of the character rather than on the ego of the actor. One of the people who was transfixed by Chekhov's electrifying performances was the young George Shtanov.
Beginning in 1917, the immense power changes brought about by the Russian Revolution affected both Chéjov and Shtanov in profound personal and professional ways. By 1927, Chéjov, the Moscow Art Theater's most brilliant star, having suffered from alcoholism, nervous breakdowns, family deaths, and divorce, was marked for arrest and liquidation by the repressive Soviet regime.
He was condemned to death.
Yes.
He was condemned. And when Techniques of Actor, Chekhov's book, appeared in typed shape, it was a revelation of the spirit of Russian theater. For us, Stanislavski, it's official teacher, it's some kind of sacred car. But Michael Chéjov, pupil of Stanislavski, he's a real Russian artist who knew real secret of acting.
Did you know about his production of Hamlet in Russia? Do you know that it was one of the reasons that he left Russia? Chéjov had described this to me. In his production of Hamlet, there was no ghost. That the ghost was a image formed in Hamlet's mind by his trance. And when the ghost appeared, he would be lit from below, the stage would go dark, and he would go into a trance. The Soviets did not approve of this. They considered it occult, mystic, which it is, and they closed that production of Hamlet.
He had a problem with drinking at one time. He had mental problems, which I didn't see later on, except he was very, as I mentioned, anxious about the police and about any bureaucratic pressures because of his experience in Russia.
Great artists give you something of their soul, yet the great artists have the courage to enter the dark attic, throw the light in the corner, get rid of the cobwebs, show it to you, reveal it, I think, which is what the best acting is, and then close the door on it again. That's the difference between the great actors and the not so great.
He escaped to Berlin in 1928, becoming a popular theater and film star in Germany. He also met George Shtanov for the first time in Berlin, and they developed a close personal friendship that lasted until Chekhov's death in 1955.
Until the age of 10, I wanted to be like Papa, a doctor. Then, at that age, they sent me one day to a theater, and I saw a play. I came home, and I declared, I'm not going to be a doctor, I'm going to be an actor. So I started to go from various studios, acting schools, and so on. And I was a young rebel. I dared to disagree with a few points in Stanislavski's teaching. Chéjov arrived in Berlin. I called him up and I asked him for an interview. Here, for the first time, I met him personally. And the first question was, Mr. Chéjov, what do you think of Stanislavski's teaching about emotional memory? And he said, I don't use it. I never liked it. I was enchanted.
Together with a colleague, George made this film, No Man's Land, and that film was extremely important, but it also endangered George's life. He was tipped off that the Nazis were about to arrest him, And Gaston Batty, this very great French theater person, very important in Paris, Georges called him and said, I must get out of Germany today. And word was passed on that he could just jump on any train and come over, which he did. And this is how he avoided the Gestapo.
When Hitler came to power, the Nazis believed that this film really antagonized their nationalism, so they destroyed all of the negatives, all of the prints they could have their hands on.
The first time I ever heard about Michael Chéjov was in 1935 when I was doing Noah with Pierre Vernet, and Chéjov came to New York to do the Inspector General in Russian. And he was the talk of New York, particularly the group theater people whom I'd meet on the street, and they said, this is the guy you have got to see.
Michael Chéjov was recognized not only by the general public, but the actors' studio people. As a matter of fact, they tried to lure him away when you were getting him to go to Dartington Hall.
I had a marvelous mother who was way ahead of her time, and my father had passed away, but she went to England and met a charming young Englishman, and they fell madly in love, right? But she had already had 3 kids, and we 3 kids were with an old bitch nurse in New York, right? Anyway, then she decided that she was going to marry him, and so we were asked to go over to England. And they found this marvelous place down in Devonshire, 14th century, some of it, and a terrific old barn that they turned into a theater.
Well, my mother was the daughter of William C. Whitney, and when she married my father in 1925, they decided to buy this property in Devon where they could promote the arts and education and research in a rural setting. So, having seen him perform, I think, in Philadelphia, Beatrice was able to wire him to come to England, and this is where he came and established the school here in the buildings beyond the courtyard behind me. And they opened to students in October 1936.
Chéjov appointed me co-director of the Chéjov Theater Organization, and the plan was to develop it like a kind of Salzburg festival.
Together, they directed many acclaimed classic plays under the auspices of the Chéjov Theater Studio, both at Dartington Hall in England and later in Ridgefield, Connecticut, in the United States.
A wonderful woman called Tamara de Kahanova was scouting for talent for Michael Chéjov. So she came to the dressing room and she said, "You are Chéjov material." Well, I thought that meant that I was going to be sent to Sibiri. I don't know what she meant. And I was fascinated. He will tell you, she said, how to move into space and how to radiate. And I didn't know what she was talking about.
Then Zelinsky came up and said, "You work in an orphanage. Children in the night. Fire. You must get them out."
Improvisation.
Improvisation. And I thought, and I said a short prayer to anybody up there. And thought, hush, it's a game. Let's go. So the children caught not the fear, but the hope. So I got in.
Stanislavski originally created what is called the method for one purpose and one purpose only, which is to find a consistency in performance. Why was I moved to tears one night and not another night? Same actor, same circumstances, same situation, same actions. Why was I not moved? And he said, wouldn't it be great to be able to find a way to prepare that the performance would be more consistent? Stanislavski said Chéjov was the next step in the method. He really was the next step in the method, which is to free oneself of oneself. After one has looked within oneself, to discard oneself and allow the character to have life.
It's a garden that gives the trees space in the true Chéjov fashion, because they used to send the students out and he would tell them to choose a tree and then find the gesture that the tree was making and put it into human form. I remember that exercise my mother talked about.
Sometimes we co-directed the same play, and we used our approaches, atmosphere, psychological gesture, and sometimes I directed one act, he directed another act, but there was never any clash.
He believed in this basis of love, and it wasn't sentimental. It was a strong bond, and in these classes, Mala has done this, I have done this, we've made a circle of concentration in which we open ourselves, open our hearts to each other. We always did it before a performance, and this made a bond that you have to. We have our differences. We like people, we disagree, we're jealous. You know, we're human. But he made us try to rise to a higher consciousness and level.
There was a flippancy about us, a giggliness which can be utterly destructive. And suddenly, this little man became a giant. And with tears in his eyes, he said, "Children, out there is a world. Unless you are serious artists and actors, they will kill you." And he was right.
He found the British students comparatively inhibited to those he had in Russia. And so he developed his exercises to help free them, liberate them as people, as much as for acting purposes. And so I always feel that his exercises for freeing actors really would be an enormous help in our educational system for everyone to experience how to liberate your feelings particularly and gather your confidence in expressing yourself. All these exercises that he developed for actors really apply to all human beings. And then by 1938, Chéjov was getting nervous about the coming war. He persuaded Beatrice and my mother to finance their removal to America, to Connecticut, where they set up the studio.
I went on the boat with Chéjov on the return to America to start the school there. He was very nervous because they were shooting people from the Soviet, that distinguished ones. A general was shot. You remember that Mary Lou was with us. And he was afraid to walk his evil dog. He had a dog called Osik, who bit everyone. And he said, hurriedly, "Would you walk my darling, my boy, Osik?" So I took this dog. I love dogs, but I mean, he was always at my heels, walked him. He wouldn't get out of his stateroom.
So we had a center in Richfield, Connecticut, and another center in New York. And this is where we had our school for acting, and this is where we developed the productions which we showed on Broadway. This great actor, really a genius as an actor, was very courageous, limitless in his courage on stage. But in private life, he was very shy, and he could talk about art, literature, and so on, but small talk was impossible for him. He just couldn't conduct such a conversation.
We were working on the lower depths, and as they were rehearsing, Chéjov said to Alfred, "You must be taller." This class of wiseacres, young talents, said, "Yeah, of course." And he said, "I'll try." And they began the scene again, and Michael said, "No, Alfred, you must be taller." Well, this went on with all of us looking on, sneering, saying, "What the hell is he talking about?" And finally, Alfred said, "How can I be taller?" And Chéjov said, "I will show you." And he stood next to Kurt Conway. And Kurt Conway was at least his height, if not taller. And before our eyes, And I witnessed this. Chéjov became taller than Kurt Conway.
When he manifested an archetypal or psychological internal gesture, the whole physical man changed, I saw him become fat, heavy, tall, thin, and God knows, young, and then very old again.
I revered Misha, loved that little man, loved how this short man, when he couldn't convey with words what he wanted, he'd leap up and become a giant. It was just marvelous.
People asked him how he did what he did. They were like, how do you think that way? How do you do that? And he'd work out an exercise or a method by which you could open doors and find your own way.
Tears coming everywhere. No place is safe. Above you, behind you, nowhere is safe.
What I thought was fascinating was the chart that was drawn in the second edition of the book. In the chart for inspired acting, you're really talking about Chéjov breaking down the character's human condition into a series of sections. His techniques, which include psychological gesture, atmosphere, radiation, centers, all of these things take you to this whole. This circle being the sum of the character.
Director Gregory Ratoff persuaded Chéjov to move to Hollywood, where he could act in films and teach. George Stanoff and his wife Elsa Schreiber also decided to move to Los Angeles. Rachmaninoff, the greatly celebrated composer, knew and loved Chéjov from his acclaimed Moscow Art Theater days and insisted that MGM sign Chéjov.
The struggle against his condition agitates him at times, but there's no danger in him.
This is what I found in his hand last night.
He didn't know he had that. Alex, you mustn't think that. He didn't try to do anything.
Do not complete this sentence with the usual female contradictions. You grant me I know more than you. But on the other hand, you know more than me. We must talk back.
Alex, what are you going to do?
Michael Chéjov did not know motion pictures. As a matter of fact, he had a great deal of trouble. He was doing a picture with Ingrid Bergman, and he was so nervous. But he was supposed to take out some matches. And say, oh, yes. And
Dr. Peterson, the promising psychoanalyst is now all of a sudden a schoolgirl in love with an actor, nothing else.
But he was so nervous and so deep in his character, they looked for a place, and he couldn't find a place for a match, so he put the match in his pocket. So then he would take out another and light in. And then the director said, cut after the fifth. He says, Michael, it's very simple. Give him another match folder, and then be sure that it lights. See? Just you do this, and then it lights. To make a long story short, they said did 26 takes. And the matches kept breaking over there.
Doctor told me not to smoke in the morning, but I'm too excited.
And it was such a fantastic bit of realism that all the crew broke out in applause.
And I think that's how he began coaching, and it's my, because he never ticked off who I knew he did it with Shelley Winters. Grace Kelly, I believe. I'm not sure that's true, but I believe Grace Kelly. Just a lot of people who then he became well known as somebody that could get these leading ladies who maybe needed some help before they stepped on a soundstage. Jennifer Jones, who was married by that time and was nearly an invention of David O. Selznick. She'd been an actress that had been in a couple westerns, and David O. Selznick made a star out of her, but she apparently needed help in acting. And Mr. Chéjov was asked to work with her.
Loot, honey. Won't do no harm to tell folks, will it, honey?
Selznick would send a limousine, and they would take Mr. Chéjov to the house, and he would go upstairs to Jennifer Jones' drawing room or bedroom to work on the part, to do the coaching. But he said, it's so strange, Jack, because all of these years, she always wears dark glasses, and when I work with her, I've never seen her eyes.
And you see, the world is so, as he pointed out, was so materialistic, so miserable. I don't like the 20th century very much. I feel I've been born in the wrong century, but I'm caught, I'm in it. And here was this man who had a very deep ethical sense. You see, there was no ethical sense in Hollywood, where I got trapped for a while.
If only the picture could change, and I could be always what I am now. For that I would give everything. There's nothing in the whole world I would not give. I would give my soul for that.
I had a success in Dorian Gray and all that, and it was wonderful, and I was grateful for it, but it wasn't my environment. I mean, they looked for over a year. It was a mini Gone with the Wind search. They couldn't find the right man. Gregory Peck was too American, Robert Taylor was too mature, and so forth. But the Dorian Gray film has become a classic. It has its mystique, but what people don't realize is I could not have done it without Chekhov's training, you see.
He'd had his quarrel with Stanislavski on the subject. They were not that polar, and if you remember, we always began our studies with Stanislavski's system of breaking down objectives, units of objectives, authors' objectives, characters' objectives.
Right.
Yeah, I remember him once talking about Stanislavski and Topolistavski and all those other Slavskis that are there.
I never consciously wanted to teach, though I did teach in tandem at the Stage Society. Misha taught on Tuesdays, then on Mondays I taught on Tuesdays, and Richard Nash taught on Wednesdays. I was not paid for it. Somebody comes to the part and I say, let's fool around with this. And I give them a hook, a kind of a core thing. This is what your part character is about.
I'm here to take you back to Fort Smith and hang you.
And I think I will not go. Now, how do you like that?
And you mean to say that you won't go with me on your own free will?
You just got it the other way around. Now, you will follow me. I didn't think you'd do it.
And I think the idea of the hooks was probably stimulated by Michael Chekhov's wonderful capacity to view life metaphorically.
Michael Chéjov came in, was introduced to us all, and he stood up. I'll try to stand up. He stood like this, and he looked around the room. And we were introduced naturally, and he acknowledged each of us. And he said, you are Khlastakov, pointing at me. Well, the rehearsals went very well. They were extremely difficult in that Michael Chéjov used to get ill and be away, or go to do a film job or something, and we rehearsed this play over 6 months. Shtanov was on the scene the whole time and was introduced as his associate. And from time to time, when Michael couldn't be around for rehearsals, Shtanov would take the rehearsals. Having been brought up in the Stanislavski approach to acting, which was internal, all internal, you examined yourself, you examined your past, you examined the internal parts of the underpinnings of the character as written by whoever, and from that, you built your character. Michael Chéjov worked a great deal externally, finding the look, the walk, the body posture, and so on. He also had an interior approach, but he melded the two.
An example of it, I was self-conscious about the fact that he cast me as the ingenue in the play, was only supposed to be about 17. But I was already the mother of Bo, who was about 5 at the time. And I had to play this adolescent girl, he came up to me and he said, Dorothy, what's bothering you? And I said, I just don't know what to do with my body. I don't remember the body of an adolescent girl. And he pulled me over and whispered to me, he says, darling, just remember you have to pee all the time. And it was amazing, you know, psychological gesture, because if that's all you're thinking about, I can't pee, you know, your legs go together and all your movements are like that, and it even affects your speech, everything.
I do not believe that the communist has ever at any time been able to use the motion picture screen as a sounding board for his philosophy or ideology.
I am one of the participants in the blacklist. Well, that had an enormous effect on the culture, in acting and thinking and the whole thing. The fact is, because of the blacklist, a certain change took place in the mentality of everybody involved in making movies.
Not even the darlings of dreamland escaped the epidemic of charge and countercharge. Gary Cooper was a friendly witness.
You tell us some of the statements or that you may have heard at these gatherings that you believe are communistic?
I've heard people mention that, well, perhaps this would be a more efficient government without a Congress.
Chéjov mesmerized an audience, and politically that was unacceptable.
Here's a Russian. He's been chased out of Russia, then Paris, and then England, Latvia, with that civil war's going on, and then he ends up in America, okay, land of freedom, land of opportunity, and then suddenly communist sympathizer, and the accusation of being associated with communists. That the one thing he wanted to do was escape. And here he is in the actor's lab, the dream, another dream, and yet again another dream is destroyed.
Friends such as Beatrice Straight and John Barry were blacklisted in Hollywood. And after that, Chéjov made only a few more films.
Then one day he announced that he was going to open a school here. And some wonderful, I think the best actors in Hollywood used to come there. I mean, there wasn't an actor that was worth anything that didn't come there.
And I love that shot of Michael sitting at the table, or standing at the table with me and my wife. Holding him up like this, your shoulders up. How you do something, how you get yourself out of your character. God, I still have papers of how I developed a character. 3 acts, 1, 2, 3. This is what I want to achieve in the first act. This is the second act, and how I'm going to go at it. And then almost always it would zoom out in the third act. Occasionally, sometimes it was a good plunge too.
Faster than a speeding bullet. More powerful than a locomotive. Able to leap tall buildings at a single bound. Look, up in the sky, it's a bird.
It's a plane!
It's Superman!
Pretty nifty, isn't it, Mr. Kent? I can almost carry it in my pocket. Now, if I have any special outside assignments, I can carry my typewriter with me.
That's right, Jimmy. It looks like a good practical investment to me.
There it is. Eyewitness report of a burglary that didn't burgle too well.
Well, congratulations, Lois.
Gee, that's cute.
Cute? Can't you think of some other word to call it, Miss Lane? I don't want to be known as the boy with the cute typewriter.
I never talked to Michael Chéjov about that. I don't think he would. I never talked to him about Superman, I'll tell you that.
Cheapers, I'll go along with that.
Good. How about you, Lois?
I'd love to, but I have a date with Inspector Henderson. Have to look through the mug books for that speedy gentleman I met in the alley last night.
Well, then come on over later. P.S. number 10.
Fine. Meet you there in an hour. Jim.
Yes, Miss Lane?
I was wondering, could I borrow your typewriter? Thank you.
I had just come to Hollywood from the stage. I did Lee and Hillman's Another Part of the Forest, and I got all kinds of offers, so I came to work in films, and I signed with Warner Brothers. And I was going to a beauty shop, and the man who did my hair, he tells me, he said, I work with George Stanoff. And he said, would you please be so kind as to go and do a scene?
I got up, I walked up to her and said, "Who are you?" I didn't know anything because I was busy with my work day and night, and I didn't know anything what was going on Broadway. "Who are you? Do you know that you are an exceptionally great talent?"
Well, George happened to think I was very talented.
But she called me a few days later and said, "I would like to work with you on my next part with Gary Cooper."
I got the lead in The Fountainhead. And so I decided I would love to work with George on it because George was obviously a great coach. And we began working. We began there and it continued for all the years I was in Hollywood. Well, of course, Gary Cooper was my favorite actor. He had a lot of talent. He really did. And a lot of charm. But he was a very good actor. He was, according to George, I think George thought he was lazy and didn't do the work he should do.
Chéjov knew Gary Cooper very well. Gary Cooper would sit there with his long legs and stretching out, and Chéjov had a very funny exercise that you did for energy.
To the sky.
You stood up, and then you imagined that there were tubes running from your feet down to the middle of the earth. You would send these tubes down, down, down to the middle of the earth. You bring it up, and now it's a mile down, now it's a half a mile down, now it's at your feet. And now you stretch out your arms, you are full of gold, and you must now send it out to the world. So it was funny to see Gary Cooper trying it.
I got over 100 grand stuck in this house. You can't even open a bottle of beer.
One day we were making a picture, Blowing Wild in Mexico. He, Barbara Stanwyck, and I. And Gary Cooper was going through a strange psychological period. And he had a long speech to Barbara Stanwyck, who was married to me, but really was in love with Gary Cooper. Mm-hmm. All the teachings that he had learned from Chéjov that weren't working. But they did 50 takes and couldn't get through the play. Couldn't get through. Suddenly the director said, "Let's break for lunch." Then I saw him go behind a tree where there were no people around. And suddenly I saw him doing, "You send it down to the bottom and it comes up, oh, and you give it. So then they came back, and they went in to take. He did it in one take.
You've tried to wipe me off before. You never could.
Maybe I never tried hard enough.
Why do you always fight me, Jeff?
You have a husband.
You could have been my husband. Why aren't you?
Because you're no good, Marina.
From that picture, he went and did the Western High Noon, and he won the Academy Award.
My wife, Elsa Schreiber, she was a very exceptionally talented coach. She worked with many prominent actors Like, for instance, Gregory Peck. Gregory said at the memorial when my wife died, he said that he worked all his parts with Elsa.
I am confident that you gentlemen will review without passion the evidence that you have heard, come to a decision, and restore this man to his family.
Elsa was, they were a great couple. And of course, George and Chéjov had their own theater, and they were quite well known. But frankly, Elsa had the so-called class act upstairs. And we were down in the basement with the cheap seats. We meaning the actors. She had all the big ones up there, Rex Harrison and all the big stars. Gregory Peck wouldn't make a move without her.
I take it this is your first honeymoon.
Yes. I mean, it would be if it were.
I've seen the worst, the dregs, but you are the lowest. Nancy! Nancy! Tell the operator to call the sheriff's office. Send some men out here fast! You think that you've been getting away with it all this time, standing by. They told me that you're a genius with explosives. Start proving it! You got me in the mood to use this thing. And by God, if you don't think of something, I'll use it on you. To chase that white whale on both sides of land and over all sides of earth till he spouts black blood and rolls dead out.
And they were all the big stars, and those of us who weren't quite so big were down below. Wonderful actors like Pat Neal, you know, and Leslie Caron.
They were terribly courteous. There was always a cup of coffee and a few biscuits, which was very often welcome, because I would be coming straight from a dancing class or something like that and was exhausted and needed a little pickup.
But they were great together. They worked quite differently. George was I was much closer to his way of working, the Chekhovian way, as opposed to, I don't know too much about Stanislavski or Actors Studio, but I do know some of the stuff that they use doesn't work for me, like sense memory. You got a scene where something terrible happens and you remember when your cat was run over. I don't know, I would much rather use the imagery that Chéjov talks about, and you let him experience it. Otherwise it becomes a highly subjective personal emotion.
I'm in love with you, so much so that I want to marry you.
How do you discover that you have within your beaming face and your completely secure life the ability to play real torment? And a thing called Written on the Wind is a classic example. And George was fantastic in this because I was dealing with 5 different stages of drunkenness. And as I said, we wound up with a different key for each one. Pagliacci for one in a very remote, delicate way, one where there's a sadistic end to it.
You've never cared about me.
Or your wife.
And why are you putting your 2 cents in?
Only because of Mitch. Because I've never had him. And your wife has.
But I had one scene which I just couldn't get, and it was delirium tremens. And he said, all right, close your eyes. Imagine you're in a coffin. You are not dead. They think you're dead, but you're not. You cannot move. They're about to push the lid on top of you. And your psychological gesture is, let me out of here. It worked.
We're going to have a baby.
You shouldn't have done that to me.
You, Mitch, and your little...
How's that nothing to do with me?
You dirty...
And Written on the Wind, I saw him function. I saw his walk. I saw it long before I ever tried to do it myself, so I never was self-conscious because I was playing. He was doing all of these things.
I'll be down at the river, waiting.
You know, this is when acting is fun, when you can do it in concert with somebody that gives you the key and you together do it, and he's very special.
I did my first film, An American in Paris, without any training at all, which was extremely uncomfortable. Made me very, very nervous. I didn't know what I was doing professionally. And at the end of the film, Betsy Blair, who was a pupil of George Danoff, told me, "Leslie, you seem to love acting. I think perhaps you would enjoy taking classes and learning the trade." And I met George, and I worked with him for at least 4 years. First of all, it gave me a technique. Also, there's more to acting than just saying the words. Sometimes the walk in a part that you play is extremely important. You can really convey the character you're playing. And if you want me to demonstrate about Lily, well, we worked a lot on Lily with George, and we came to the conclusion that she was a sort of half-wit, and so she wasn't standing up straight like somebody who's ready to face the world. She was, it was there and in the knees, and she never quite walked straight, and so she was just lost. She just couldn't put things together very clearly. Now you would like to know about Gigi. Gigi would be somebody who'd have a spring in her walk, you know. She was free, and she walked like that, and the chin was up, a little bit defiant.
She was raised to raise eyebrows, but Gigi more enjoyed raising the roof.
That since the world began, no woman or a man has ever been as happy as we are tonight.
You see, and you work on those things, and you already nearly have your character.
The biggest thing that Chéjov gave us is the idea that you start with the character first, you invoke the character, you coerce the character, you seduce the character to you. You don't go, I'm going to play the role this way, you know, because then you're stuck in stereotype, you're stuck in result. Chekhov's particular emphasis was on coercing. Remember that exercise we used to do of being in the garden? Seeing the character in the garden, he beckons to you, you talk to him, all that stuff.
The thing that I learned from them, Michael primarily, is the use of being ready, and being ready by analyzing the script instead of just saying words, trying to find out what the character might have had in mind. And it worked for me.
You want to be careful. Hoff's a man with a crocodile's temper.
Oh, don't tell me about Mr. Hoff.
I know, I'm a swell guy. Get out of here!
There's a word for you.
Well, why don't you say it, darling?
Irene! Irene, where are you? Irene, where are you? Irene! Myra!
I go along with the Jacobian formula, finding what your objectives are and your colors. To say externally, what the hell are you going to do with externally? You stay outside. You know, I was an internist.
If I get to liking someone, they ain't around long.
I notice when you get to disliking someone, they ain't around for long either.
You're wanted, Wales.
You a bounty hunter?
Yeah, he's got to do something for a living these days.
Dying ain't much of a living, boy.
Yeah, Clint had come to Los Angeles to take a business course at Los Angeles City College, but he fell into bad company with actors and the like, and got interested. And so really his first contact with formal acting instruction was auditing some classes at Steinhoff and attending lectures by Chéjov himself. And that school of acting appealed to him.
Star quality is something that you're born with. And there are different kinds of star qualities, but to me it comes down to radiation, what you were talking about, the radiating. And certain people radiate very specific things. You were talking about Clint Eastwood. To me, Clint Eastwood isn't a great actor, but he's a great radiator. You know, he is this thing. He has this presence and this power. It comes from nowhere. You can't explain it.
Get 3 coffins ready. I don't think it's nice, you laughing. You see, my mule don't like people laughing. He gets the crazy idea you're laughing at him. Now, if you apologize like I know you're going to, I might convince him that you really didn't mean it. My mistake. 4 coffins.
Brad Pitt, you know, when I worked with him in River Runs Through It, we drove back together from Montana, and I hadn't seen Thelma and Louise, and he said, I really want you to see my work and tell me what you think. I came out and he said, so what did you think? Did you like my acting? I said, you know what? I don't have a comment on your acting. It has nothing to do with it. You don't have to do anything. You have a magic and a beauty that I don't think is going to be matched by other actors of our generation. You have a gift. And that's what star quality is.
The thing about Jimmy Dean, the only thing, I mean, obviously he was magic on the screen. He was a brilliant actor. I won't say he was that original because it's après Marlon Brando and après Monty Clift. He was considered absolutely the best actor in live television in New York. Well, he was here doing those films. Obviously, he wanted to study with somebody. How he got introduced to Michael Chéjov, how he began studying with him, maybe through Shelley Winters. His friend Mijaíl, who had been Vampira, they were always together. They went to the house at night. Finally, Mr. Chéjov stayed up too late at night. He didn't feel so good, so I don't think. It depends how late. I don't think past 10 o'clock.
No, I don't want you to go to the police. There were other people. Why should you be the only one involved?
But I am involved. We are all involved. Mom, a kid was killed tonight.
This is all going too fast
You
for
better
me,
give
son.
me something. You better give me something fast. Jimmy, you're very young.
A foolish decision now could wreck your whole life. In 10 years, you'll never know this even happened.
Dad, answer her.
Stand up! You want to kill your own father!
I guess you're about the best looking gal we've seen around here in a long time. I think. Prettiest I think I've seen down here.
Well, thank you, Jen. That's a very nice compliment. And I'm going to tell my husband I've met with your approval.
Oh, well, no. Well, no,
Jimmy had different kinds of radiation. I liked him. I remember sitting at lunch one time at Warner's. Jimmy and I with Jane Mansfield. Do you remember her? Yeah, she was out there too. By golly, Janie was out in front, and she was out in front of Marilyn too. Anybody, and Gig Young. And we were sitting there having lunch, and the waiter came by and said, what will you have? And I ordered, they ordered, she ordered, and it comes to Jimmy's turn. He says, and you, Mr. Dean? He said, well, wait a minute, he's looking at this thing, and he crossed his legs a few times, everybody's looking at him, and Gig's head was, or hairpiece was about to fly off. And then finally he comes up with Jimmy comes up with the response. His response was, let me have one of them there hamburgers. Yeah, after thinking about it for 5 minutes, he comes up with a hamburger.
I'm a rich boy. Me, I'm gonna have more money than you ever thought of having.
Why, that's wonderful, Jim.
You sure do look pretty, Miss Leslie. You always did look pretty. It's pretty now, good enough to eat.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Ah, you're touchy, Vic. Touchy is no cook.
And that's what star quality is. That's what Marilyn Monroe had.
Oh, do you feel the breeze from the subway? Isn't it delicious?
Marilyn Monroe admired Chéjov very much. It was a very strange thing about this girl. She had very good taste. She admired great people. So she was a student of Michael Chéjov while he was alive.
There is a misconception that the Strasbergs were the only ones that really had an influence on Marilyn's acting ability and in her coaching. And indeed, that is not true.
Actually, she got in touch with me when she saw Panic in the Streets. And she wanted to know, did I work with anyone in particular? And I told her about Chéjov, and she asked if I would introduce her to him. And Michael, I asked Michael, and Michael said, I don't have time no more. I don't have no time no more. I said, please, Michael, let me just bring her by. I said, all right. He said, but I tell you, I will not take her. And so she came by. And I called her later and said, what happened? She said, well, he's going to study with, he's going to work with me 1 day a week.
Michael Chéjov came into her life in the fall of 1951, and from that time until his death in 55 was really the most important influence on her ability as an actress. And in fact, she stated more than once that he was the man she admired more than anyone else for many reasons, including, of course, his ability to draw out of her some wonderful performances.
When I would go for my private class on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, it fluctuated a little bit. Marilyn Monroe was the class before me, although she was already a star. She was frequently not there.
And of course, she worked with Chéjov privately, too.
Yes,
she
that's
worked
what
a
I'm
lot
saying,
with
at
Chéjov
the house.
privately.
And a couple of weeks later, I called her again. I said, how's it going, Marilyn? She said, it's going beautifully. I'm working with him 5 days a week. So Michael loved looking at that flesh, too.
Michael Chéjov used to talk to me about Marilyn Monroe, about this person, and I just knew of her because she got this part in Asphalt Jungle under John Huston. I just thought she was great.
Thought you liked it.
Maybe I did. I don't anymore.
Haven't you bothered me enough, you big banana head? Just try breaking my door, and Mr. Emmerich will throw you out of the house.
And she became my kind of star, and then All About Eve.
Abel.
Abel? You
you say, Sable or Gable?
Either one.
But then when I went to see her in films like Don't Bother to Knock and Niagara and How to Marry a Millionaire, I thought she was wonderful in it. Obviously, the great ones with Howard Hawks and such. But I realized that he was coaching her, and she owed a great deal of these performances to Michael Chéjov. And if you read her book, she says it.
Hi. We forgot about the stairs. Isn't that silly? It was very easy. I just pulled out the nails.
Oh.
It's perfectly safe. Nobody will ever find out. Well, where shall I sleep? Hi, Dr. Fulton.
Hi.
What'd you say to her? Mrs. Fulton, he said hi. I heard what he said, you peroxide kissing bug.
Edwina, she didn't do anything.
I'll pull that blonde hair out by its black roots.
Edwina, please. Edwina,
Come
stop
on,
it.
come on,
Miss
come
Dollar,
on.
you keep out of the way. Well, all set.
Is your motor running?
Is yours? Takes a while to warm up.
Does me too.
The screen has never shown this kind of woman before. The kind that reaches out in the loneliness of the night to a stranger passing by. I should have seen the warning of danger in her eyes. Why didn't you tell me you were working here?
I'm not. I'm just doing it for tonight.
Yeah, I know. You're an heiress. Tomorrow morning, you ride through your estate. Side saddle.
She made you say that.
I can't figure you out. You're silk on one side and sandpaper on the other.
I'll be any way you want me to be.
Why? Why is it so important?
Because I belong with you.
What you see is that she really is coming to her own as an actress. She's more relaxed. She's more at ease. Her comedy is more fluid, and her drama is more fluid. So I think you see that she was really finding herself as an actress, and I think a lot was due to his wonderful coaching and making her feel that she really had some value as an actress and that she was not just a blonde sex goddess.
He sang of love just as she lived for love, like a Lorelei, flaunting her charms as she lured men on and on to their eternal destruction.
It's getting late. Hand me my slip.
I hate to move when we have a fight. Never want to leave your side.
Get me some orange juice, Georgie.
Smell like a dime store. I know what that means.
Sure. I'm meeting somebody. Just anybody handy, as long as he's a man.
But she could never be his, nor any man's, completely.
We're just two little girls from Little Rock. We lived on the wrong side of the tracks.
There's a certain kind of girl would take advantage of a situation of this sort. May I kiss your hand?
I always say a kiss on the hand feels very good, but a diamond tiara lasts forever.
Marilyn Monroe definitely felt that Michael Chéjov was a great influence on her life. She admired him more than anyone. I think she felt that she was gaining more from him as an actress than anyone else she'd ever studied with. And he was giving her a feeling of confidence and authority that she had not really captured before. People had been putting her down, the producers and directors of her pictures had been putting her down and really not giving her any credibility. And he felt that she had a great deal to offer and that he gave her that kind of confidence.
Of course, it's only what you might call a physical attraction.
Physical.
I mean, you're so big and strong and, well, so darn healthy looking.
Guess I am in pretty good shape for the rodeo. Of course, you gotta be when you're competing in all 5 Class A events.
Great performance, but Marilyn Monroe is right up there, and I would believe that she owed more of that to Michael Chéjov than she ever did to the Strasbergs.
And it stayed that way throughout her entire life. Even after he had passed away, she continually was supporting his ideals and promoting his name.
Good night, sugar.
Good night, honey. You're not giving yourself a chance. Don't fight it. Relax.
I think she was developing into quite an actress. messed up at the end.
And when she died, she left part of her estate to Michael Chéjov, which I think says something.
Chéjov and Stanov knew that their ideas about acting and spirituality were way ahead of their time. They believed in the imagination and in bringing out the best in the actors who studied with them, as opposed to many of their contemporaries who believed in breaking down the actor's ego and personality.
I had a great deal of misgivings about Lee Strasberg's when I went to watch one of the classes, because I thought he was totally unraveling a girl who, after that, would need a month in a hospital to get her confidence back again.
I went to the actor's studio once, just once. I was invited by Kazan. Stella Adler was teaching then. And the once was enough. I didn't believe in that system of teaching, so I never went back.
I know what Bobby Lewis thought of it. I know what Stella Adler, who I knew, thought of it. I know what Monty thought of it, which was like that. And he was one of the originals and walked out. I know what Kazan thought of it. I know what Brando thought of it, which was, I mean, his teacher was Stella Adler. I mean, she, I can't tell you what it was like. It must have been hell.
It was about tearing people down psychologically and stripping you bare. And for me, that's the antithesis of my job as an actor.
Laurence Olivier said, you should never frighten an actor. And Lee Strasberg, I don't like to speak unkindly of the dead, whom I also studied with, was a completely different kettle of fish, as we say in America. There are many people swear by him, but he was intellectual, he was brilliant, but I saw him, and Olivier saw him, destroy an actor or an actress. Chéjov would never do that.
You don't teach someone to get acknowledgement. You teach someone because you really can see the potential, and it's an honor to set that free or ignite it or empower it. Some of the really recognizable or famous people that I've taught, like Woody Harrelson, Marissa Tomei, Andy McDowell, William Baldwin, and a number of others who are also well known but maybe not quite as in the public eye at the moment. Everybody has shimmering moments. I was so excited that Marissa was nominated, overwhelmed when she won. And then when she mentioned my name, she just said my name in front of how many million people? And it was also such an honor to be acknowledged in that way.
Star quality is radiation at its maximum. Some people think you either are born with it or you're not. Well, I would agree with that, but only to the extent that some people are born with it, but it's blocked. And what Michael Chéjov did was he found a system through which you could unblock the natural star quality that is in you.
But I'll tell you, when Yul Brynner came on stage, radiation, you know, who's that?
I do not intend to have my boy brought up in a harem.
Who's king here? Remind you so you remember that. I do not remember any promises. I do not remember anything.
I beg of you, don't take revenge on this girl. This girl hurt your vanity, that is all. She didn't hurt your heart. You have no heart.
Am I to take orders from English school teacher?
No, not orders.
I am king as I was born to be.
Michael Chéjov said to Yul Brynner, thank you for showing me that my method works.
Be okay. That's great. So you know what? You take your time doing that, okay?
Chéjov loved improvisation. We all, every Friday, had to do improvisations.
Do you hear something? Shut up. Somebody's screaming. No, it's not screaming. It's something. It's
the dog barking.
Chéjov once said, Mr. Cooper, I have never asked you to do very much because I don't know whether you have worked in the theater. And Gary was, no, I never have. He says, well, would you like to do an improvisation for us? And he said, well, he got up in this lope of his that he had, and he said, well, and he was in the center of the stage, and everybody was
better see Gary Cooper act. So he said, well, yes, I would like to do an improvisation, but I'd like to have Akim Tamirov, Tony Quinn, Kennedy, and Mitchell help me in the improvisation. He says, well, all right, fine. And Akim was delighted to be included in the improvisation, and so was Johnny, and everybody was. But what was the improvisation? He says, the only improvisation I can do, he said to the audience, is a poker game. I would like to play poker, and we'll see if we can play poker.
Tony Quinn already told you about it, because I think I was in junior high school at the time, trying to find where this man was, and I kept hearing these rumors, and this became a legendary improvisation. I couldn't get there, I couldn't see him, but everybody talked about Chéjov had created this poker game improvisation that hand by hand finally got down to Akim Tamirov and Gary Cooper.
Gary Cooper looked at his cards and says, 50 and 50 more. So Akim said, his lips started shaking. He was one of them. He could shake lips, could shake eyes, could do anything. So he said, I call and I raise you 100. So then there's a longest, and it held. The longest look between Akim and Gary. Akim looked at his cards, and he held a gun. He says, you're cheating. That's all. And suddenly, but before he pulled out, Cooper's gun had been out. And he said, I'm what? Now they stood up. He says, you're cheating. He says, you say what once more, and we're both going to be killed here. And I must say, he scared the hell out of Akim Tamirov. It was that was one of the greatest improvisations I'd ever seen. Really wonderful.
So, Stacy, you are a radiating character, and Brandon, you are flying. So let's see.
All right, you want to play the games? We'll play games. Count of 3. We'll do it at the same time. Okay? We'll play your little game. Okay? You want to do that?
Yeah.
You want to play that?
Yeah.
Okay. You ready?
Fine.
I'll count it. 1.
Wait. Okay, go.
1, 2, 3. I'm gay.
Pregnant.
If you are talking to witty people, comic characters, if you think that the center is somewhere there like a butterfly, it just brings something funny to your, the words are dancing there, the thoughts are dancing in front of you. That's one. Then you're playing an intellectual, and the center is going to be the forehead, and the forehead is going to be heavy with thoughts, with a lot of learning, with a lot of experience, and that's going to be another character. Then you have seductive women, and no doubt the center is on the bosom, and they walk around like that, and that's where the center is.
The center can be any place you want. I mean, an aggressive character would probably be thinking with his right arm. And maybe Othello is a man who thinks, I have a sword and I can kill anybody, and I am the captain, and you must obey me. Now, that makes you, I'm not acting, I just feel a form. I just feel a form here. Or it could be in your stomach. What do you mean? I am the captain. I am the captain of the ship, and I command here. Now that's a man that's afraid of his power to command. He won't take the power.
Prepare yourself for a perfectly outrageous motion picture.
I got a feeling I'm being made.
You are.
Got to warn you, I don't do anything on my first date.
We'll see.
Winner of 4 Academy Awards. Best Supporting Actress, Beatrice Straight.
She gets the winter passion and I get the dotage. What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to sit home knitting and purling while you slink back like some penitent drunk? I'm your wife, damn it! And if you can't work up a winter passion for me, the least I require is respect and allegiance.
But the centers were wonderful, and atmosphere I loved too. And they were giving the Academy Awards, and everybody was in a big theater in LA. And they mentioned my name. I couldn't believe it. I had to be pushed out of my chair. I did. I thought they'd made a mistake.
While my mother and sister were hiding in the dark and kind of watching me, you know, hoping I was going to be in the movie business, I turned around and imagined I saw my director making fun of my newly acquired psychological gesture from Mijaíl Chéjov.
How about it, you creeps, you lunatics?
Jeez, I mean, you guys do nothing but complain about how you can't stand it in this place here, and then you haven't got the guts just to walk out? I mean, what do you think you are, crazy or something? Well, you're not.
Do you think there's anything wrong with your mind, really? Not a thing, Doc.
I'll give you the real Olympic Games! Exercise! Throw your arms out! Come on, you look like some kind of weird penguin!
In the fun house. How do you know who's really crazy? How do you know that it's supposed to be you that stops it?
Psychological gesture deals with, in the early days, they had the school of Delsartian acting, where this was grief, this was anger, this was heroic. While a psychological gesture is Stallone at the Rocky. So that creates in itself an emotion. This is an actual outward manifestation of emotion.
When I asked Chéjov what was his psychological gesture for Hamlet, he told me it was Gothic. He told me that Hamlet was a student. He told me the world was changing. And he said Gothic, and it is going towards heaven. And he made this gesture. And it's extraordinary as a concept of construction. I said to him, I didn't think that was the gesture for Hamlet, that my gesture for Hamlet was a piercing moment when one tries to understand the world.
Chéjov believed we seldom express ourselves directly, almost always indirectly. People in everyday life wear a mask to hide feelings and purposes from other people. Actors also create masks. The mask of the character is the sum total of the actor's preparation for the role.
After the play was over, I got pregnant and we had a child die in the crib when he was 3 months old. Well, it was a terrible thing. And I was in terrible depression. I wouldn't go out of the house. And one night Bud said he was going to the group. I had started being in the group, not that I planned on being an actress, because I wanted to be around Chéjov. So I said, all right, but I'm not going to participate in any way. I was so afraid if anyone spoke to me, I'd start to cry. So we always started out sitting in a semicircle in chairs, and Chéjov would have you get up one by one with a feeling of ease, which is one of his precepts. And Bud told him that I didn't want to participate in any way. And my heart started beating more and more as he got closer to where I was sitting. And then he stood there and he said, Dorothy, you come to my arms.
I think Chéjov is very relevant today. Any method that helps an actor find his art and find ways to express himself is incredibly valid. And obviously there are a lot of people, I would say more than any other technique, that draw from that technique.
There are now workshops being given all over the world. There is an international organization called the IMCA, the International Michael Chéjov Association. And this whole interest in a kind of energy, spirituality, things that one can talk about today much more easily than you could in the 50s. There weren't that many people who understood or were open to it. Now they are. And those actors who are really interested in how can I radiate, how can I move energy that it can touch my audience in a more profound way, are now finding their way to Michael Chekhov's work.
Michael Chéjov, the great secret. The great acting secret. But isn't that the way he wanted it?
Michael Chéjov believed with his whole being that every talented actor is possessed by a deeply rooted desire for transformation. The pursuit of transformation via peak performance, not only by performing artists, but by athletes, scientists, and others, is one of the age-old quests of the human experience.
I think most of those kids, though, they have a yearning, a need to be good in the competition. The competitiveness is very visible, and it's wonderful. It makes them all better.
Experts in the expanding human potential movement call this event being in the gap, or being in the zone, or in the flow. It is an altered state of mind that allows the once average human to achieve miraculous results with comparative ease and grace.
Hello, please.
Anna, am I Anna? Why not Tamara or Lisa? Why not Tatiana? Yes, why not Tatiana? No, I don't want this. I want to be me. Whoever I am, I want to be me. I want someone to tell me, someone to accept me.
What about your boast that you could pass her off as a duchess at the embassy ball, eh? I'll say you're the greatest teacher alive if you can make that good. I'll bet you all the expenses of the experiment that you can't do it. I'll even pay for the lessons.
Oh, you're real good. Thank you, Captain.
Almost irresistible. She's so deliciously low, so horribly dirty.
I don't have to kiss you in public. I've got a nice dark taxi outside.
Well, what are we waiting for? Come on. Don't just stand there.
I shouldn't tell you this, Mandrake, but you're a good officer and you have a right to know. It looks like we're in a shooting war.
To work with the Chéjov technique is not just something that you learn as an actor. You learn it as a human being. There is something ennobling in the work. I do not know who I would be if I had never met Michael Chéjov. I would look at the world somehow totally differently. I was fortunate enough to meet him when I was 16 years old, and he lives as vividly for me in my memory today as people that I saw 2 weeks ago. George remembers how years ago, in Russian melancholic moods, he'd said to Chéjov, "Misha, what are we doing here in Hollywood? We didn't become involved with the theatrical profession to make better actors for Louis B. Mayer." Chekhov's reply was brief but poignant. "We're not making better actors for Louis B. Mayer. We are helping people, human beings, to grow spiritually, to become better humans."
I'm sure if Michael Chéjov were here today, he would say that the struggles and the barriers and the obstacles didn't matter. What mattered is that they got there and they arrived and they passed the baton, and that what they were giving to people works.
I was lucky. I was lucky to have this fantastic tuition, and more than tuition, the right attitude towards the profession. A noble, self-respecting, conscientious and professional attitude towards acting, so that you don't feel like you're a bit of a whore, just showing off your youth or beauty or whatever, your legs, but you are somebody with a professional luggage, and that's what George gave me. Thank you, George.
Happy birthday! Aside from the atmospheres and the qualities and where to place our centers, George taught us great respect for our profession and for ourselves. My very first night, scene night with George, I was very nervous, and he came back stage and he said, "How are you feeling this evening, Professor?" And that's what he called me, because he said it was so serious all the time. And I said, "I'm very nervous, Mr. Stanoff." And he said, "That is the most egocentric emotion that an actor can have." He said, "The audience does not want to know how you feel. The audience wants to know how St. Joan feels." I said, "Yes, sir."
I know what you're thinking. Did he fire 6 shots or only 5? Well, to tell you the truth, I've kind of lost track myself. But Ian, this is a 44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, and would blow your head clean off. You've got to ask yourself, do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
I love the thought that somehow Dirty Harry has his roots in the Moscow Art Theater. I mean, it's completely true. It's completely unrecognized, but there it is.
Oh my God, George, look at this. Dear Mr. George Stanoff.
Culver City, California. Dear Mr. Stanoff, Hillary and I are pleased to wish you a very happy 90th birthday. We hope you have a joyous celebration and a wonderful year. Sincerely, Bill.
I wonder who it is. Clinton!
Clinton.
He could have been a good actor, huh?
Yeah.
When is breakfast served?
Here?
I have a...
Anytime you want.
Oh, really?
Are you hungry?
No, it's just that we, tomorrow...
Do you know John Barry?
Yes.
I'm really quite pleased to do this. And now that the telephone, you better pick it up and say hello. Hello.
Hello, Mr. Barry.
Hey, great, yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
Bob.
Holy Christ.
You can tell him I'm your new assistant.
Bob, where the hell are you? Oh, well, I thank God I heard from you. I thought the world had ended, and I thought maybe you were dead. Listen, I don't know where you are, but I'm in the midst of doing a big interview about Michael Chéjov, and I'm being photographed. So if you could, if I could find out where the hell you are.
And there's the Academy Award nomination came on that black piece of plastic, and the edges were all kind of curled up on it. And my brother said it looks like a death notice, and also looks like it's used. So anyway, forget the Academy Award. That's the Emmy, I guess, and a couple of nominations, and And that's pretty much it.
I don't know. Anybody that's silent, Eastwood reminds me of it, oddly enough.
Eastwood studied with Chéjov and Shtanov when he first came to Hollywood, and they had a huge impact on him.
I didn't know that, you see.
Oh, I didn't.
I didn't know that.
Well, that
There you go. That wonderful ability to hold a silence.
We will talk today about radiation.
George, where do you start?
What?
When he says action, you start talking.
Not
That's
yet?
a movie.
Not yet?
Not yet.
I'm ready to dance.